We've seen so much Wrecking Ball, Symmetra, Farah, all from one team, the Chengdu Hunters, and of course, most of that roster is from China. All four of us have really fallen in love with Chinese Overwatch, so the purpose of this show is to just chat about what we've really enjoyed in Overwatch League, Chinese contenders, and kind of theory craft what's to come. So everybody, welcome to our first episode of China Talk. I'm Katrina. I'm with Volamel, Kenobi, and Vowels, and let's have some fun, guys. Let's have a good night. What was your first favorite part of Chinese Overwatch? What kind of brought you to that scene?
Wow,
I'm just a hipster.
Yeah, me and Vowels have the out of like we were chosen to do Chinese Contender Season 2 with Broadcast GG. Volam's a little bit more veteran than we are.
Yeah, Joe's been.
I wasn't following it for that much longer. Like I would partake in some games. Like I knew a couple teams beforehand, but like I wasn't like fully, into the memes until like Season 2. Like I'm not too far learned past you all.
Honestly, I got a lot of the love from Chinese Overwatch from hanging out with all of you. Like especially last World Cup, I remember Vowels just hyping
Twitter
China
was
up
our Twitters were just like going off the rails, just like
we're
gonna beat South Korea, dude. It's happening.
No way.
Like even I, one of the pantheon of many of these Chinese pundits coming out and we're gonna beat Korea. I'm like, nah, dude, like you don't get it. Like I've called it up until this point, barring a couple matches that were fairly upset worthy. This is where the buck stops. This is where things.
I think we kind of just had to have fun with it.
We were just Well, I mean, for us, we've always said that it doesn't matter because we win either way. Either China beats South Korea and we look like absolute gods, or we die with our ship. So like we have the both ways. Did
I ever tell you about how I was introduced to Fraggy?
Tell me.
So it was immediately after World Cup that people had gone to their hotels and I had met Fraggy at like an after party and it was introduced, and the only way he knew who I was like, oh, you're the guy who predicted China to win. And if you remember back, he was playing, if I remember correctly,
he was
on the Finnish World Cup team who got knocked out in the quarter. So it was just like, oh, that's a little awkward. Like, weird to meet you on these terms, but nice to meet you. It was just like, well, I mean, hey, you got it right. It was just so bizarre to be introduced on those terms. Like,
the guy,
not ideal.
The guy who thought we would lose.
Not only did you doubt me, you were right.
And he's so like big in person. Like everyone's so much taller in esports than I ever imagined. Like just meeting Volamel the first time, I was just like this big compared to him. And Vowels apparently is like what? You're 6'3".
Vowels I've heard is tall.
Very tall.
Yeah.
I've seen you with the cardboard cut out of Doha.
Technical term.
I've seen you.
Oh, God.
I've seen you. I've seen the comparisons.
But speaking of predictions, I don't know if any of us could have predicted the impact that the Chengdu Hunters, as well as 3 other Chinese-based teams in the Overwatch League, have made already. But Chengdu is special in its own way, and I think you really only have to look at Chengdu versus Paris this past weekend to see why. Kenobi, was there anything special about that game that really stood out to you? I know you're
I'm
French,
bit of a so fan. Like, and I said, I said when I was watching with some other people, I was like, this is like Sophie's choice for me, because either like I have to either root for Paris or for Chengdu Hunters, and I can't choose. They're both like my favorite children. But it's really interesting how kind of we're watching people fall in love with Chinese Overwatch kind of like we did, but it's a little bit later, right? They're getting introduced to it through Overwatch League, whereas Volamel, Vowels, you and myself have all fallen in love with it through like the first 2 seasons of Chinese Contenders, and like all the players that are on Chengdu, we casted and we broadcasted them, and now they're kind of being shown to this much wider audience, and it's really cool to see them become this fan favorite team that everyone loves. Chengdu except for Yiska, because he's gonna lose a Lord bet, but
I definitely appreciate how much the general Overwatch community has grown to love Chengdu. I kind of anticipated that because Hunters run all these wacky Chinese compositions, everyone would kind of just see them as the weird kids sat on their own at lunch table, not really want to touch it, only interact when you play your favorite team and win. But the fact that everyone has embraced, like the Among memes, for example, the Yotta Chad, best player in Overwatch history on Wrecking Ball.
The copy pastas.
It has been nice just watching everyone fall in love with the Hunters, rather than just kind of push them to the side.
They're an interesting bunch, aren't they? They are a very interesting bunch of players. And to be fair, their coaching staff isn't too far off on the spectrum of, bravery and stupidity, right? You come in and you started, innovating back in the day with, how to beat dive. Dive's so good, we're just all buying into dive. And Ray comes in and he's like, no, the answer is Junkrat, McCree, and Reinhardt. 3 heroes we haven't seen in the meta for, 6 months at this point. And now he's like, you know what? The biggest big brain plays, we don't ever engage them on King's Row. We leapfrog with Symmetra like it's some sort of moose elk strat until we get to the point. Like, it's succeeding. I gotta hand it to him, but we talk about the players and them being kind of wily. You never know what you're gonna get with them, but at the end of the day, from the top down, this is a team that's just wily, and you never know what you're gonna get from them.
Like even just seeing that. Oh, sorry, Vowels. Go ahead.
I was just saying. I think it's definitely a little bit underappreciated. Just the unique approach Ray has to the game at these highest levels, where you can just think, not even outside the box. He's like down the street from the box. Whatever metaphor you want to use, but it's just the way he can break down some of these compositions and some of these strategies and just think of it in completely different ways to everyone else. I think that's a very underrated part of the Hunter success. The reason that they've been able to survive with a main tank who only really plays Wrecking Ball, the reason that they don't need to play the Ghost competitions that often is because they've got someone like Coach Ray who could just come up with all these strategies.
And I think go ahead.
Real fast, for those of you who are, Chengdu seems like a fun team. Let me see this coach who they're talking about. And you're going to pull up that Wikipedia page and you look at the coaches section. And you're going to be like, all right, there's this guy named Ray. And then there's this guy named Rui, R-U-I.
Yeah.
The former coach of Miraculous Youngster, R-U-I, apparently is pronounced Ray in some facet. Hopefully at least I'm pronouncing that right. That's who we're necessarily talking about. We're talking about the former MY coach, not Coach Ray, Coach Ray. Right. If there's a distinction there, hopefully, attune the ears.
It's a slightly different pronunciation of the R, which is not the easiest.
The head coach. We're talking about the head coach.
The head coach. The MY head coach. Clear. The other thing that's weird about like Chengdu, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, it's like, how do you prepare for a team like that? Because it's almost like there's no one like Chengdu. It's kind of like Volamel, you followed Smash before, right? And it's like, how do you prepare for Hungrybox? There's no other, Jigglypuff who's as good as Hungrybox. And then if Chengdu is saying, well, we don't want to, we just want to keep all of our stuff under wraps, you can't beat that team. It's just, I mean, you can beat them, obviously. It's just very hard to prepare for something like Chengdu because they're even probably still holding things that we haven't even seen yet.
Like, even in my experience as a coach in NA Contenders, if you have like 5 teams who run goats on a certain map and then one comes along and they run double sniper, it's nowhere near as drastic a change as we're seeing Hunters doing, and that's still so hard to prepare against instead because you get no scrim time against it. If you have when they're playing effectively a completely different game, some of the strategies the Hunters come up with, you're right, it can be very hard to actually prep against it because there's a lot of theory involved with you of, okay, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that, but it's nothing compared to the actual game time situation.
And some of these teams have another match to prepare for as well. So if you have a double week and one of your games is in Chengdu, if you have Chengdu as one of your 2 games that week, good luck, homies.
Like, Vancouver
I wish you the best, but
that was a stressful moment right there. But I think it's important to talk about why that main tank is so relies so much on that Wrecking Ball. There's a bit of an explanation to that is slightly complicated. Kenobi, do you want to kind of explain why we've seen a lot more Wrecking Ball from Chengdu? So
I think especially because it's Ameng. And Ameng, I remember, is probably one of the first people to ever play that hero competitively. It was when he was on Moss 7 Club, the quarterfinals for Chinese Contender Season 2. he brings it out. No one's ever seen this hero before, really, in a competitive sense. I think maybe it got played in Korea or something, but he was definitely one of the first, and it didn't work out that well for them that particular series. But I think we're seeing it a lot because it's just a comfort pick hero, and the way that they play around Ameng, the way that he got the buff now, basically, which I've called the Ameng buff, which is just now you can hit E, get your shielding, even while you're in ball form, which is pretty nuts if you think about it, because you usually had to, like previous patch, you had to get out of ball and just use your E. But now you can just keep rolling with an extra 400, 600 shields. So I think it's a comfort pick, and I think the way that Chengdu plays around his aggression, he also just doesn't die, which is, he has just like a very fundamental understanding of the limits of his hero, which is actually something a lot of Chinese players seem to have with specific comfort picks.
Yeah, most definitely. He knows his limits really well. It's he gets in, he gets out, he gets away with a lot of different things. But not only that, but he's proven to be flexible on the biggest stage. You know, we've seen him be super flexible in contenders, you know, playing everything from Diva to Hog to Sombra to Pharah to Orisa, a little bit of Winston Ryan in there. But the question was, could he play it at the biggest stage in Overwatch? Can he play it against some of the best players in the world? I wasn't even willing to put him forward as being like this big main tank. It was, okay, well, they don't have JayKiran in. If it's going to be Ameng, you're going to get Wrecking Ball, or you're going to get something that you're not expecting. You're going to get a Diva, maybe an Orisa-based strategy. It's going to be something weird, and it is, but it's not too far off from what everybody else is playing. It's a different look. One oddball pick definitely changes the whole entire composition and how it plays, and it's, attack windows and whatnot. And they have their style of their own, but it wasn't super far off. And now in stage 2, they're really hitting the gas pedal. They're cooking with all kinds of propane with these sim strats, and it is a meta in flux, I would say. So yeah. I think they've gotten a slight inadvertent buff because of how chaotic things are, and people have to prepare for the meta, and then they have to even assume is it worth trying to prepare for Chengdu, or are we just going to work on like baseline stuff?
And we've seen that not only can Chengdu run all these compositions that are a little bit weird and out there, but especially like in the Vancouver game was maybe the best example across the 2 maps where suddenly they switched to goats. And it's a look we've never really seen from them before, and everyone's questioning, can Ameng actually play why not? Yeah. And sure, they lose the series on map 5, but they actually go toe to toe with the Titans on goats. Even it's not like this is a crutch that they're running this kind of stuff. If you can force them onto the goats compositions, they can still beat you, and then they still have all these other strats as well.
And that wasn't that the game where it was on Route 66 where Ameng blocks Puffer's shatter, and then gets that 4-man shatter right after. I think it's
probably one of the best just performances I think we've seen out of Reinhardt. And say what you want about Vancouver didn't prepare or couldn't prepare for Chengdu. I think a performance like that comes around only once in a while, and watching it live was, especially as invested in Chinese Overwatch as I am, that was really cool.
And Volamel, you mentioned JayKiran. Can you kind of explain why he's first of all not currently in LA, and why that makes a big difference to Chengdu?
I assumed it was going to make a big difference. I don't know that it necessarily has.
Chengdu said to stay in China. They just said, you don't need to play anymore.
I will say that stage 1 could have gone better, especially in the early half of the stage. Week 1, week 2. I think Chengdu were still trying to get their bearings. What is interesting is that originally he wasn't announced with the roster. Now that could be a multitude of different things. Was this a deal, behind the scenes that was kind of handshaked on, that, contractually they couldn't, legally sign anything just yet between, the Hunters and Ameng? Was it, I believe, JayKiran was on Team CC, so was there some sort of contractual dispute there? Was it not the right time? Was he not necessarily interested and now is interested? Did they, were they interested in finding an actual, tenured main tank to bring into the roster? There is some questions there. But unfortunately, he is stuck in China. It seems like he's having visa troubles of his own, needs to hone his inner sideshow to hopefully get the Blizzard backing behind him and bring him in. But there again, I don't know how much it would matter, but I can't sleep on how wily this team could be. Maybe JayKiran gets brought in, maybe he plays Rhine, and they, maybe Aming and Elsa share play time with Flex Tank because, again, historical, context shows us that Aming has some big history on Diva, and he's got some other pocket picks to work with, like the Wrecking Ball. So maybe there's some sight there.
Even like on Moss 7 Club, where we saw him bringing out the Farah, as you alluded to before, and,
the Tracer too.
The Tracer, the Sombra. We know Among is like the ultimate flex. He's the Wrecking Ball, Yoda Chad, whatever, but he can play the off tank, he can play the DPS, maybe not always to an elite level, but it's a serviceable level. And having that extra little bit of depth, when the first time you see JayKiran and Among walk out on the stage together, you're not going to know what's coming at you.
I think it's also pretty... Go ahead, Voss.
For all we know, JayKiran spending all this time in Tracer, all this time in China, he's just been working on his Widowmaker.
Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, Aming's tracking is pretty nuts, actually. And, like, when you look at his pile drivers and the way that you're supposed to get the kill afterwards, he usually is, like, getting those one-tap kills most of the time. And that's probably because he has time on these heroes like Tracer, like Sombra, heroes that you need to have the tracking for. And it's definitely, those mechanics have carried over a little bit and definitely help him, I think, elevate his game just a little bit more.
And we talked a bit about Aming, but at the same time, there's so many other players on Chengdu who contribute. Like, I'm just thinking of Elsa Symmetra this past weekend on Hanamura. That blew my mind. But what are some of your favorite players on Chengdu or even on other teams from China?
I think the biggest name next to Aming in terms of the Chengdu Hunters has to be Jinmu, who I have my opinions on. They're not necessarily shared by the audience just yet, but you'll see. You'll all come around.
You'll all see.
Jinmu is someone I always had a lot of respect for.
Sure.
As a DPS player.
Yeah, gotta respect him.
In general, when people talk about the Chinese region, the Chinese bed, there's a lot of, you talk about these DPS players who don't really care. They like to take the 1v1s. They like to take like to play really aggressively, not too much hesitation. And there is no one who is more aggressive and is better than Jinmu. He's the perfect intersection of the two.
Yeah.
I think he's a great example on DPS of how the Chinese region in a whole plays. You'll play Genji into Goats, dive headfirst into a Brigitte, pull out his Dragon Blade and get 3 kills because he just doesn't care. He's definitely
he's either too brazen to care, too stupid to care, or just see these windows like it's algorithms passing through him, like
Matrix.
some sort of whatever you guys were talking about before this. So some sort of like space-time geometry nonsense. Like he's just seeing it flash before his eyes, like Neil deGrasse Tyson in that weird GIF that I love so much. Like it could be a mixture of both. It could be one of 3. Who knows? But he's very stylistic, I would say, and needs a team that can facilitate him. And Chengdu is that team, but what I don't want people to see is like, oh wow, he's so good at these DPS heroes, like he's amazing. Let's just put him on all the teams. It's like, well, guys, no, he doesn't work on all the teams. Like he needs a team to work with him and follow him up. Yeah. If you put him in Dallas,
no.
And I think in that regard, someone I don't think gets enough credit for what they do for the Hunters is Yveltal, locking down that main support role. Just about everyone on the Lucio, when they pull out Jinmu's Farah and Yveltal's on a Mercy, almost never dies, always keeping everyone alive. I think Yveltal is definitely, if not maybe on the same level as someone like Slime or Moth yet, they've got to be starting to get into the conversation for top 5. Again, Yveltal just never seems to die.
Yeah,
always has Guardian Angel off cooldown to dodge out of danger. Always has Valkyrie off cooldown. Always has Rez off cooldown. And so many of the crazy aggressive plays we see from the Hunters come from the fact that Yveltal is just so good at staying alive and keeping everyone else up.
I think another person who, well, for me, I'd probably say Yang Xiaolong just because I have to, because I'm a weeb. But in all truth, I would probably say Kyo. Has also seemed really good actually recently, and he's someone that I think kind of flies under the radar a little bit, and he's basically to me what Chinese Zenyatta's are, minus a lot of the bad stuff that we see. You know, he doesn't get these issues where he's just flanking and frontlining playing DPS. Zenyatta, he has a lot of fragging moments, but he plays it very cleanly. I don't usually see him screw up trances that often. Very clean on his Discord placement as well, and just has those fragging moments that a lot of the Chinese Zenyatas that we've seen in Contenders so far have. So I think he's someone that also flies just a little bit on the radar. I think he's definitely, if you're grading the duo, I think Yvettle is probably on a higher level, but I think Kyo, if he continues to play this way, because when he was back in Contenders, I didn't think he'd be as good as he is now. But if you continue to like rise like the way he has been, like a lot of the Chinese talent actually has been, where they just keep on getting better and better as they get, you know, more experience, I think he's definitely someone you put up there in like the A tier or S tier Zenyatas.
Yeah, I think maybe the best comparison you can think of for the Hunters backline is maybe the Philadelphia backline, where you have this amazing Mercy player. Maybe Yveltal doesn't get all the Battle Mercy clips that Neptuna doesn't get all the high ratings, but seemingly everywhere on the Mercy, always staying alive, one of the most underrated main supports, I feel. And then you have Kyo versus Boombox. They're not the most flashy Zenyatta,
They get the
they're
job
not
done.
like not the Jonak, not the Dosin, but they are at least consistent. You aren't going to lose games off the back of Kyo and Boombox's performance, and they still are of an Overwatch quality. I feel like that's maybe the best comparison you can make looking at last year's rosters.
Yeah, and Yvettal had a great performance also in World Cup
Really good,
alongside.
yeah.
That's where we kind of got to know a bit more about some of these players we now see in Overwatch League, and we have to talk a little bit about Gushui.
Why not?
It's so it's weird that like so Volamel, I think at the beginning of the season was like, oh, they're gonna trade, you know, Gushui over to Chengdu, and Chengdu is gonna become this playoff team instantly.
They should,
and
they'd get a nice chunk of change if Chengdu was interested in it.
Yeah, and it's so I've heard like it's weird because I've seen like the videos of like when Hangzhou plays with Gushui and their communications, and it's like it's like kind of weird. It's like Vowels is talking about that little kid at the table who like is by himself, and it seems like everyone is speaking Korean around Gushui, and Gushui just says like fighting, and like when they speak English and stuff, it's like I want him to be in a position where like he can communicate with the rest of his teammates in like a better way, because I think Gushui has a play style that's very aggressive. That's I think you need someone to back him up on, and I think one of the reasons Hangzhou has this issue is that it seems like whenever, you know, Gushui is going in, he doesn't have support from his team, and I think you need to have, especially for Gushui, to really just be the best player that he can be. We saw it like when he was on LGD, he had a lot of support around him. I don't think in Hangzhou he has that same type of support, and it's really hindering his performance.
So far in stage 2, I have a video coming out on this very topic. So far, granted, they've only played against the Titans. I don't necessarily know if it's just the communication breakdown. There are some like just like hand on head silly moments that I'm at a loss for words on why Hangzhou think this is an okay idea. One, for instance, that I thought was pretty egregious. There was a fight on Hanamura B defense where Hangzhou is pushing up the rightmost side in that narrow corridor going up into the high ground, you know, kind of where I'm talking about, right? And the Titans are sitting in the corridor, you know, contesting like most teams do. As Hangzhou approach, Sashin decides not to blanket his team as they move onto the adjacent high ground overlooking the point. They get hit with a 6-man fire strike, and they go from having an advantage in Earth Shatter, Hangzhou that is, a disadvantage in terms of alt charge because the Titans main tank just cleaved everybody. And then they set up this weird dive that doesn't make sense, and it's super disjointed. It's all over the place with this team. Like it's a communication thing, it's a coordination thing, it's a mechanical thing, it's a sometimes unlucky things. You know, sometimes, you know, Twilight just sleep darts out of the sky. And it's everything with this team. I can't really put my finger on one or the other.
Yeah.
So Vowels, what do you think needs to be done in the case? Would you also suggest that Gushui be traded over to Chengdu?
I feel that might be for the best. I feel like Hangzhou, I kind of had questions about their roster building in the first place, building around the cores of X6 and 7, who were never incredible Korean teams. Like, sure, they
You
have
can't see it, but my heart's just slowly breaking and bleeding. You're just kicking it repeatedly.
Yeah, they have some good. They've got some good They've got some good players. They've had some good moments. But I feel like if you build a roster around these middling Korean teams, we're even in trials not too long ago. You're never going to hit the same highs as some of these other teams. Like, sure, there've been some great moments where they forget their communication issues from out and everything just seems to click. But overall, it's not quite there with that team. We've seen some great moments from Gosu. We've seen great. IDK has been a huge standout as well. But I feel like they expected they could have a bigger step up overall coming into the league than they did. I think the fact that Crystal is seemingly MIA doesn't seem to help. I feel like they expected a lot coming from the Gosu and Crystal as a pairing. I heard last I heard, Crystal had returned to China not long before the season for medical reasons. I haven't heard any update on what's happening since. We don't know. He's just vanished.
You know, Vowels, reportedly he's in talks with Boston.
Yes.
Man, if anyone could make a single Chinese player on an otherwise Western roster work, it'd be Huck.
It might be Boston.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that's the one caveat you can give. If there's one team that can make that work, where they just bring in this melting pot of nationalities and different players. Maybe it's Boston. Maybe we do see Crystal traded over there.
Just have Fusions yell at him, and there you go. That's it. Just have Fusions call Crystals.
He's yelling at me. I don't know what he's saying, but I think I should play better.
Yeah.
I think Hangzhou definitely expected that overall the roster could make a bigger step up. Bringing Gosu and Crystal and IDK could maybe alleviate some of the weaknesses we saw in Contender's career. And unfortunately for Gosu, bringing it back to Chinese players, that we haven't quite seen that step up.
Okay. And so while we're kind of thinking of things that might happen, things that are rumored to happen, how about Kenobi, Vowels, Volamel? Each of you predict something that you think will happen with a Chinese player, Chinese team. What's going to happen in either stage 2 or the overall season?
Oh, okay. I have one. Okay. So Shy has come back to Billy Gaming. I think Shy in stage 3 or 4, he hasn't missed a beat. He looks incredible. His Zarya looks really good. His DPS
You're speaking my language,
his
Kenobi.
DPS still looks really good.
Don't mess this up, son.
I think you call him up. You either call him up or you trade him. One or the other. I think you can stage 3 or 4. You call him up. You can play him with Crystal if you want. Bring that duo up. And I think that's what you do. Shy looks. He's the best DPS in Chinese contenders.
Shy
right now.
looks incredible.
Sure.
He's also 16.
Yes.
Damn it. Okay.
Even then, let's.
I was so hyped, dude. He's so like. I can't express to you how like incredible it is, because he basically took a season off where he played for X6 for their trials, and then he comes back. His Zarya looks so good. He looks like a Zarya player instead of just a DPS who has transitioned to Zarya. Then you put him on Tracer still. Looks like a god. He's still one of the most clutch players. He's done things this season where it's like you think the match is over, and then Shy just, clutches it out. I think he is a person that you can definitely, if Leave isn't coming back, which we don't know yet, I think that's definitely like the next step is you bring Shy. And Shy is like this person who you can build around. But he's 16. He's 16, so I'm sorry.
Let's play with that logic for a second, right? Let's assume he's 18, he's of age, and I can sign him today if I was the Sparks manager, right? Does that solve a lot of those issues with coordination and communication? I think that adds almost more of a dilemma for them to solve, because if Gosu isn't working, and statistically he's got a better performance, and I'm sure if they're playing him more often than No Smite, they're investing practice time into him, right? If Crystal isn't playing, okay, now we're investing into him, and he hasn't played with the team in a while, and why aren't we playing Adora? There's question marks there. If, like, for next season, for instance, again, playing within logic, if you're trying to rebuild the Spark, I'm totally on board there. bring them on, maybe go full Chinese, maybe have like a Korean player or two. Like that could work, but I don't think just importing him now, I don't think that solves any problems. It's really fun to think about. Again, like I love me some Shy, don't get me wrong. But as of right now, definitely not what they need. I think I think they need to almost go a Florida Mayhem route.
You can go
okay, something's not working. We need to reevaluate how we're developing our strategies, because I think their strategies are just way too far past what the players can execute on. Mm-hmm. I think you need to, define how and where your roster is going to be in the future. Are you going to be Chinese? Are you going to be Korean? I don't know that the mixing is working right now, at least with these core of players. I think stage 2, if they don't have a good look against Boston, needs to be a real big evaluation for them. And
you just can't go down 0-2.
Rebuilds might be in order.
Can't go down 0-2 against Boston. That's just when it's already over. It's over at that point.
No. And Vowels, you crushed Kenobi's dreams, so you have to have a quick hot take for us right now. What's your prediction?
I think I would like to see Hangzhou Spark go the other way. I feel like at this point, if you can get Crystal back over to LA so he can actually play again,
sure,
you might almost have better luck going the other way. Start picking up some of this star Chinese talent that is maybe still simmering at the service. Shy, unfortunately, underage, but if you look at maybe someone like Eileen of the Guangzhou Charge, going over to Charge in exchange for
just
Eileen.
Not only Wish.
Not only Wish. Let's not talk about him.
He's in Guangzhou Academy hell right now.
Pick up a nice Chinese diva. Maybe Heidi is someone I'm personally very high on. Maybe you pick
MG,
up one
maybe either one. Honestly,
you can grab the coldest and Mika DPS support.
Sure. I do feel like the best
who
thing
are
for
of age
at the moment would be to commit to one side or the other.
Yes.
I feel like Guangzhou's had a little bit more success with it, even though they've got similar overall scores. I feel like Hangzhou, it's kind of obvious that there's a definite ceiling here, and they've got to make some big change. And I think going full Chinese would maybe be the change I'd like to see them do. It'd be out there, and it would be a bit of a gamble, but I think it could pay off.
Definitely.
We could see that happening, and maybe
I just want to see a good supporting cast for Gushui, please.
Yeah. Well, that was my idea. It was like, if you put because if we go back towards like more of a dive centric meta, you want to have someone like the Winston Tracer. I wasn't watching personally when that was like a huge deal, but what I've heard of is like that was one of the most important things when it was dive meta back in like Apex was like your Winston and your Tracer players. So like if you bring Shy, and we're at this point where like the meta is a little bit more dive centric, and you have Gushua and Shy just wrecking havoc in the backline, maybe that's works. But again, he's 16, so a couple of years down the line.
I don't think it's like a bad show.
Yeah, you could just be like the greatest prophet of all time, Kenobi, and just a year from now we'll be watching this clip and you'll be telling us
Shy just wins MVP 2 years from now, and it's
there
just
exactly, just calling it now. But honestly, you also mentioned Guangzhou Academy, but I feel like we could talk about that for hours and hours, and unfortunately that is time we don't have.
Wait, what's Volamel's prediction? Or do we have time for that?
For Hangzhou?
No, for just anything, like a Chinese team. This season. Speedrun. Let's see.
Speedrun. I think Guangzhou probably can offset some of their players, and I think you could probably have a trade between the two the two teams, the Charge and the Spark. I think you could probably trade some of the Korean players from the Charge to the Spark and the Spark to the Charge. I lean for
Godsby.
I don't know about him, man. Yeah. I like Godsby. That's been a member of that X6 core that like hits me right in the chest. But not been looking good. Not been looking like himself. Is that the strategies that they're playing? I don't know. Mechanically, he's always been solid. But there's something about that last game against Vancouver that was just not good. Maybe it was stage jitters, but this is stage 2. Like, I'm starting to run out of excuses for him.
What if, Hopper hasn't looked stellar. What if you send Rhea over?
Maybe? Oh, okay.
Possible.
Rhea for Eileen, call up a Chinese diva like MG or Hy-B, bring up Mika and Coldest from Hangzhou's Academy team.
And then just go full Chinese.
You've got another stellar full Chinese team.
The possibilities are absolutely endless, which is why, honestly, all 4 of us love Chinese Overwatch. If you've learned anything from watching those compositions, anything is possible.
Yeah.
There's so much more to discuss. There is, of course, Chinese Contenders, which the lovely Kenobi is casting right now, so we will have to dive in further into his expertise next time. But thank you all for joining us for our first episode of China Talk. We made it, guys. We're still in one piece.
Through the technical difficulties, we did it.
We did it. And I can't wait to talk next week, see if those predictions come true, talk a little bit about Contenders, and we hope to see you there. So thank you all, and good night.